He's going to do the
clap.
I should do the clap.
Whoa. That's so rude.
Welcome back to the With Luke Smith podcast.
Just the guy that goes like, and we're live.
You know what? It's time to start delegating. I'm in a week where I'm delegating responsibility, so
Yep.
I will henceforth hand over clapping privileges to you.
Appreciate that. I can at least handle
As
that.
long as you can stay in
Promotion.
If you can stay in this camera shot for the whole episode.
I can't because it makes me lean forward.
We'll move that. Let's move that slightly back. Do we need to move it slightly? Just slightly.
Good idea.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you can move.
Oh, no.
Oh, well, just don't then.
No, because you got the cable in.
Don't screw the cable.
Well, it's fucked now, so
Just slide. No, you slide the laptop a bit
Gone.
back.
it's going back.
You slide them.
It's fucked.
Just bring it back then.
Alright.
This is what college education does.
Wow, university.
University.
Yeah, well,
Sorry,
in
I was
America.
listening to
America.
I was listening to something on YouTube that said college. So
Is it something enlightening?
no, particularly.
It's not worth sharing with,
No.
with the open-ended YouTube and whatever.
I wouldn't want to take the
the limelight.
limelight or direct the
No, you wouldn't
conversation
do
in
that.
any way.
Well, I want to start with this. Also, we clarified that Oscar's injury sickness is better
Yep.
Fully recovered.
from the strange. Do you want to explain? I think because there's not much awareness about this
No, there isn't.
platform about sport.
And we figured out that this is a silent, not killer, but affecter of people, given how many people came forward with their own anecdotes about it.
Yeah, once you spoke out,
Yeah,
it was a bit of a watershed moment.
exactly.
Not so much for Luke, but yeah, now that
Yeah.
the circle,
Yeah,
people just coming out of the woodworks, and this is actually something that is affecting
a lot of
men and
people.
women.
Yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't discriminate.
How
Yeah.
did it come out? Where did it sort of?
Well, Oscar was brave enough to share his experiences.
You don't have to, mate. This is going out to a lot of people. So
Yeah.
Give an overview.
Of what I went through.
Just a little one.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
So I forget what the actual name of it is. Starts with P. Yeah. But it's effectively an ingrown hair.
Yeah, we're creating awareness about this thing, which we can't remember the name of.
Yes.
Continue.
It's an ingrown hair, which was unfortunately between the cheeks.
Yeah. The posterior region.
Yes.
That's how you say it, but it's
Yeah.
not classy. Yeah, posterior region. Yeah.
So between the cheeks.
Yeah.
And it was just like this ball of pain, really. So the more I sat down, the more swollen it would get. And eventually got to the point where I was lying on my stomach and my sides for about 2 weeks.
So he couldn't lie on his back, couldn't
Yeah.
sit down,
Could barely walk. I was constantly
cowboy walk.
on Panadol, which is, heavy stuff. And eventually I had to, a lot of people get surgery for it, but I didn't have to. I'm one of the few lucky survivors who could make a full recovery.
But I didn't realise this is a common thing. I never heard of it before. And then a bunch of relatives and stuff told us that
Yeah.
it was similar.
People with, hair on their ass, I guess.
well, we're clearly the right nationality for it. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a wog, then,
Anyway, glad to see you back
You just cut
upright,
him off.
sitting
Yeah.
down.
Still
Do you have more to say?
Well, I was just saying I had to, get it pierced and we drained it over a couple of days. And,
That's what I was trying to look at.
I now see what you were trying to do. Appreciate. Sorry. Yeah, I think
But
Don't
it's-
ignore
it's
the signs.
It's the with Luke Smith. So there's a subtlety to podcasting that's often missed when you're watching it. But,
Yes.
now you can see a bit of that art, when it's just there's that right-hand turn,
And if I might add,
You may. Might as well.
do not take sitting down and lying on your back for granted.
Yeah,
it is a
that's
true gift that you get to do it every day, because I didn't get to do that for about 2 weeks. So yeah.
What were you wishing for when you were?
What was
were
the
you just
number
like,
one
I can't
craving?
wait until I can walk.
No, sitting
Without-
down.
It was the lying on my back in bed that was
Yeah,
please God,
big set.
because I'd have to like find the perfect spot to like fall asleep and stay as still as possible.
Terrible, really.
Yeah,
it's actually a very
sounds terrible.
painful thing he went through.
And like I'd just wake up in the middle of the night in like agonizing pain, very delirious, thinking there was some sort of political battle over the territory. Like,
that's two separate things.
no. The point is, I was delirious. I was delirious when I woke up, and I was delusional in the middle of the night. And I'd just be like, "Oh, one more hour so I can have more Panadol." And
So how did you actually get to sleep? Would you just like have a chance?
so
You
yeah,
would be so tired.
So exhausted from the pain, whilst lying on his stomach, he somehow falls asleep, I think.
Yeah.
you have to time the Panadol dosage so that you can get the least amount of pain
By the way, this
possible.
does not constitute medical advice. This is Oscar's experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that. And then you go to sleep when it's pain free, and then it comes back, and you move, and then that's when you wake up. Yeah, good times.
Any temptation to have anything stronger?
Yeah, big time.
Any reason you didn't pull the trigger?
No. I guess I was just, I don't know, content.
When it's sort of then
Yeah, like the doctor said, if Panadol's good
that
enough.
started
then-
the pathway to recovery.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just who would have thought that line on your ass can be such hard work
I know.
and not to be taken lightly? It reminds me, there's a George Carlin who's a famous comedian. He had a bit about that, like why do we listen to people who motivate us? He goes, I think it's motivating the people who sit on their ass all day. He goes, they're the people that, do you know how hard that is to just sit and do nothing? And like he goes, they're the people that impress me, not the motivational sort. So it's not always as easy as it looks. Sitting on your ass and doing nothing.
Exactly.
It's not. It's miserable.
It is miserable.
I have
It's actually hard. It's harder than it looks.
Yeah, you
I
always.
have a whole new appreciation for those people.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
They're really the unsung heroes of society in a way.
Yeah.
There are many unsung heroes of society, but there are plenty of sung heroes of society. And the sung heroes, we're glossing over this on the last episode we did, often are communicating on Instagram and being activists via the wonderful platform designed perfectly for activism. And I thought this was funny because we did that episode that because of certain conflict going on in the world right now, there's a guy I had on Instagram, and I think his family has ties to the region or something like that. So, but like it seemed tenuous. But he was putting out a lot of information. I noticed a lot of people putting information on about war in the Middle East and things like this and all this conflict. And then I kind of gloss over it. I take in bits, but I don't absorb much because I'm always a bit cautious when the source is just people I know and putting stuff on Instagram. But it was funny that this guy, whatever he was saying, because I didn't read into it too much because he was just so much text, and it was on Instagram story. But it's funny, I noticed he put up a story which was saying, I apologize. All the information I've been putting up is actually incorrect. And thank you very much to the people who pointed it out or something. I don't take it lightly. Because it's so important having the right information, and he just keeps going. He goes, I've learned from this that I shouldn't rush to, like, whilst I should speak out about things, I should only speak out about things that I kind of really understand and not rush in with a comment. And I just wanted to share that because we did our little activism based episode. I thought that was quite funny, and a lot of truth in the reflection after. But there you go. Is that a lesson that other people might apply to other people?
I mean, we'll see what happens when the next crisis comes.
I just loved it. I shouldn't rush into things unless I understand them. Thought
It's probably true.
yeah, it's pretty good. He's like, I'll leave it to the experts to comment. I'm like, it's pretty good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
I thought.
I think those issues, particularly even the people that study them and have worked in them for multiple years, still have trouble.
Still have gaps in understanding.
And also
which I think they admit often.
Yeah.
Or you know.
And those big conflicts and issues that come out, it's not like, people that come out of the woodworks, like this guy did a 180, probably realizing, shit,
At least he did the 180.
Yeah.
At least he did the 180. I've got to give him that. I found the whole thing very entertaining. But the interesting thing is, what was that quote? Silence is violence or something. And so,
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, sorry.
who picked that one up? Who saw that? Was that you?
That was me. It wasn't silence is violence. It's just like people who haven't been vocal on certain issues, your silence is noted. I was like, oh.
What do you think? Do you think that's a fair? Do you think that's a fair thing to lobby someone? Like,
it depends what you're silent on. But
that's what I think.
Like, are we talking? It depends what we're talking about.
And I think a lot of the time that's put out there is normally in hindsight.
Isn't it?
It's
like
only retrospect. Like you should have spoken out against that. Like this is like they always throw this around at the Holocaust is the biggest example. I think rise of Nazism and things like that. Like you should have, if you were around then, you should have done something. But I always hear other people say, look, if you weren't there, unless you were there, you don't know.
Yeah.
Unless you were there, you don't know.
You don't know how you'd react by being in that situation.
No.
Like, you just don't know. I think there's a lot of recounts, like you're saying, which are, it's very difficult to say you just speak out. But I think maybe if you're silent in a more smaller things, like, for example, there are situations at work maybe, or like small, smaller scale things that impact you and people that you're close to, for example. I mean, directly impact
it's
you.
It's much better.
You're not going to be silent.
It's much better to apply that thinking there.
Yeah.
As opposed to feeling like I wonder, because when the example I just gave you guys of this guy who's putting a lot of commentary on Instagram. And then he realizes, I kind of stepped in it, and he retracts and he apologizes. Good. There's a lot of people who I've never seen do that, and I'm pretty sure they're just chucking stuff out there. But you make me think when you say that. Do people think that they're just meant to? Because I'm always wondering when I see that, because I'm so heavily skewed the other way. I'm so conservative, right, for better or for worse, because of my experiences. So I find it so hard to understand why people rush to put commentary out. But what you made me think there is that, do we feel like, I have to do something? Is that the bias that motivates a lot of that? Like, something's going on in the world right now, particularly a foreign international conflict where you got nothing geographically so cut off from it. So is that I wonder maybe why people rush to comment or throw their 2 cents in.
It's a good point, because I'm like similar to you in that way, probably leaning heavily on the other side. That's the bias of this
group here.
Yeah. So it's hard to put yourself in, because I imagine people feel like, see pain and suffering, and then they sort of want to,
which I get too.
They feel like they can, jump in and do something about it. Whereas there's 2 ways to look at it. Like, sometimes it's very hard for that to actually do something about it.
Yeah.
But also, there's situations where they might be definitely helping, so it's hard to distinguish.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah. It's the people like they view these things as objectively, like, morally good and bad sides, and I guess they're just keen to be on the good side, even though that's a different way to look at it.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, though.
I think, but the truth is
I think these things are not mutually exclusive either.
Yeah.
I think these are overlapping influences on our behaviour.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think we want to do the right thing, but then we also have a tendency, I want to be on the side of the good.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then I think what we see a lot of in our society is people rush to declare they're on the side of the good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throwing their weight behind, putting up a certain flag or whatever it is. It's always a new thing. I don't like to get caught in whatever's happening right now, because I think the more interesting thing is the ongoing thing that creates all this stuff, which is much more underlying and universal. And that's an interesting part of it.
Interesting point. The thing I find with those bigger conflicts, issues that a lot of, like, they're ones that are so complex for the most part.
Massively
that require
complex. Wow.
a lot of deep understanding of what it is.
Yeah.
And I think we've already talked, but like just jumping
It's
in,
all right,
like your friend, like the person you saw.
My friend, yeah.
It's just so open for you to be wrong about it.
And here's the thing. This is where I come back to. I remember I was, this was our Europe trip. And everything.
Almost
Where did I
10
go?
years ago.
Almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
2016. I remember saying to my mum, don't tell so-and-so that we're going to Europe, that Luke, Dan and I are going to Europe, because we don't want people, crashing our trip, saying why weren't they invited or something like that, right?
What if they listen to this?
I remember it's too late now.
Yeah.
And I remember she came one day and she's like, oh, I just saw, let's say Madeline or something, first name came to my head. I just saw Madeline, which is a friend of mine's mum. I go, oh yeah, she said her son's going to Europe. And I go, oh yeah, Joey's going to Europe. I go, Mum, I told you not to tell anyone we're going to Europe. And that's exactly the person that I don't want to know, And so people miscommunicate. Like when I think, and then the other thing, I always think of Mum with this, when she's telling a story I've told her, and I'm hearing her tell someone on the phone a story I've told her, and she'll be going, and then Joey did this. And I go, Mum, I didn't do that. I said XYZ, not ABC. She goes, oh yeah, that's right. And she just proceeds with the version that, she wants to tell.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, me and my mum are not in the political decision-making positions or in news media or anything, but I think it seems very hard for people who have lived their whole life or known each other their entire lives, live alongside each other, to get things right factually between them. And that seems to be a very, very human thing. Like, it's very hard to even know what's going on in the lives of the people you live with. There is so much that is concealed from you for people you actually live with, love, care about, have good relationships with, right? Not active trying to hide stuff, just you don't know. And so I think when you blow that up to international scales and you're looking at whole different countries you've never even been to, and you got people within those countries making decisions. Obviously, you still get people reporting in media and stuff, but I was fascinated to this unanswerable question. How much can we really even know, even if there is a wealth of information out there? Not to disregard the information that's out there and say that the information out there is inaccurate, just that it might be partial more often than not. And so if you imagine a pie graph, a pie chart, which is like this, you get, it's like a slice of pizza. How big is the slice of pizza for how much we actually get, how much information about how much of the full picture can we really get? Is it a tiny slither? Is it like a 50, we can see about 50% of what's going on? I imagine it's always differs thing by thing. It's just always hard to really know.
Yeah.
And taken too far, that leads to wild inaction. We may have talked about that last time. You can never ever know, so never do anything. But I like what you said about the stuff that directly affects you and you're directly witnessing and you're directly experiencing. And
you know what made me think of that?
Yeah.
No. If anyone from work's listening, the very engaging compliance training that you have to do about, just about like anti-bullying and all these sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But it sort of raised that thing about being silent, and I was actually
the bystander.
That's a good point. Like, what would you do in those situations? But I think like that's a much more understandable version of like being silent when it could impact like someone directly involved in that sort of situation. But again, it's hard to be like,
it's hard to prescribe.
Yeah,
it's very hard to prescribe.
Because every situation is very different as well.
To prescribe.
It's like,
yeah, like we talked about this before on episodes without Oscar, but like I feel like that idea.
The good episodes. Yeah, the good old days.
So what were we talking about?
I cut you off. Sorry.
No, I'm
You
joking. I'm saying that you feel like the thing when you're trying to say what's the right thing to do versus the wrong thing to do, you can't. It's hard to come up with a set of rules. It seems to be very generic advice, I think, which is take it case by case and always try to do the right thing.
Yeah. One thing but the right thing is...
Which stops you going like, you know, it stops you from trying to overcorrect from your previous experience you had. So that's a very, try to give an example of that. It's like if I'm playing soccer and I'm running with the ball and I can either shoot or pass, you know, someone else is maybe in front of the goal and I'm in a position to shoot. It's just a very simple example of maybe, you know, I shoot and I miss. And I think maybe the lesson is, I should always pass. But the lesson is not you should always pass. The lesson is sometimes you should pass. And sometimes you shoot and you're not going to score. And that's actually part of shooting. That's a simple example, but in bigger things, I feel like sometimes it's like that. So that if there is that idea that, after the rise of Nazism, we can't afford to ever be silent on stuff we see. So that's a very overboard in the opposite direction response. You know what I mean? Because sometimes in overreacting to something that you think, that could end up like a bloody another, you can overreact to things and create more problems.
Yeah, I think we could do it on the small scale with our own personal lives. But
not even that. This is sometimes I think I ask myself when I see people, especially getting heavily invested in things that are so far away from them. I always think, okay, and it's much more about what I do. I always think, am I before I get caught up about that, right? It's happening in XYZ country, foreign country. Am I being a good bloke in my everyday life? Am I being respectful to, parents, friends, brothers, work colleagues, employees, boss, am I ignorant about my own community here? Yeah. Or do I not get back to people? Do I not know? Am I rude to them? Am I entitled? Am I always think I'm always right? I go through, like my dad used to say to me when I was doing the non-profit Nepal stuff, he used to always say, charity starts at home. You know what I mean? Can't do the dishes. I gotta save the world. It's like charity starts at home. Which is funny and true.
I think, there definitely is. If so much of your focus is going towards this big thing, you can be blinded to all the stuff that's grounded in your actual life, which is those people around you.
The reason I bring it up is because that's always been my experience. Yeah. I always notice when I'm getting super caught up about something, especially bigger issues, especially things that are a bit further away from home and my everyday life, it's like driving. If you're looking at the right lane, eventually you're going to start veering into that lane and away from where you should be. But you got to look at the right lane. You got to look at the left lane. You got to look ahead and you got to check behind every now and then, but all in balance. And when you start to hear that boop, 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 of you, dangerously getting out of your lane. And that's how it feels. It's not to do it. It always feels like balance is the way. So, did we cut you off because you were kind of brought up picking the side of the good?
No, but what I will say is how you said that by focusing on these bigger issues, sometimes you ignore the smaller ones. Yeah. I feel like sometimes people focus on the bigger issues to compensate.
Yeah. Compensate, escape.
And it's not even just that. There are a lot of tokenistic things in society, like church every Sunday. I'm a good person. I can do whatever I want.
Explain tokenistic a bit more. Let's say someone's never really heard that word used before or in this situation. What is tokenism? You can go through a few examples. The church one's a good one. Yeah. It's close to my heart.
Yeah. Close to our heart.
This is how we've grown up.
Well, in this instance, I'd say the tokenistic actions are just actions that are inherently performative. You're making sure other people can see you being a good person And that's meant to either create some sort of validation with people around you or make you feel good about yourself.
Yeah, signaling.
Yeah, signaling.
Yeah, I think that's the word that comes to my head, signaling. And any other examples you can think of it? So, I mean, the church one, for example, is like, is to me like going to mass every week. Say you're Christian, you're going to mass, Catholic, sorry. Is that more important than how you treat people, for example?
Yeah.
Are you considered a good Catholic just for going to church every week? And the other stuff doesn't matter as much. And of course, the other stuff has to matter.
Yeah.
There's not many people would argue that. But, you meet a lot of people who are more interested in looking the part than sometimes embodying it.
Precisely.
And then again, they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both at the same time. You can go, I know people who go to mass every week and they treat people really well. I know people who don't go to mass but treat people really well. I know people who go to mass every day and treat most people horribly.
Yes.
I know people who never ever go to mass and treat people horribly. Yeah. So in every quadrant, there's representation.
Of course.
But yeah, tokenism, I think, is even funnier and easier to talk about. We can stay away from the activism because we're always walking on eggshells. But in the workplace, such a great place to observe tokenistic policies and signaling, and I mean, social media is a good place to observe that. And I often feel like I'm getting lots of beautiful things because I haven't spent as much time in the corporate world. Sometimes Luke is a very great provider of insight into some of the tokenistic stuff that happens in our wonderful and I don't know if it's even avoidable when you're in a big company because you're trying to deal with so many big organisation. Really. You're trying to deal with so many lives. There's only so much individual relationship and conversation you can have. You kind of need to have policies. You need to communicate to a large group of people at once. But it does look like where you work is pretty straightforward.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Especially for a big company. So it always makes me think, what is the value? Does it have to be?
Yeah.
When you see examples where it's really on the minimum. It makes you wonder. Because I think it just seems noisy. Tokenistic is also often like, I often describe people as tokenistic when I feel like they care more about posturing than the actual thing.
It's about...
More about posturing that they're religious. They care more about showing that they care than actually caring. Yes. Everyone cares a bit.
Yeah.
What would you if you could describe it? Like, for example, for me, it's probably not the right word, but it's more like a vibe you pick up on.
Absolutely.
That you
there's no science for me.
Yeah, there's no, but as in like you can tell when someone's like really into something, but sometimes someone's really into something, but it doesn't come off. It comes off different. I often find it hard to distinguish between.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time on the litmus test is if people need to say something.
Yeah.
Then it looks like more of a compulsion to me. Right? If it feels like someone needs people to know or needs to feel like people can sometimes I even challenge that you explained about performing for others, and I even challenge that idea a little bit. It's part of that, but it's performing just in general. Because I love the story of myself being a moron at the age of how old was I?
20.
I was in Melbourne. I would have been about 20 or 21, maybe
21,
your age.
I think, yeah.
And I've told you this story a couple of times where I'm walking past someone selling The Big Issue, which is a magazine sold by, often homeless people in Australia to help them support themselves and make a livelihood. And I walk past someone selling The Big Issue, and there's no one around me. I'm in Melbourne. I'm from Sydney, so I don't know anyone around. And I walk up to the guy. I go, "Here, here's $20." They go, "Oh yeah, here, I'll get you." I go, "No, I don't need the magazine. Just keep the money." You know what I mean? And then I walked off, and I remember thinking, whichever girl I was upset about at the time, I remember thinking, if only so and so could see me, you know, what a good guy I am. And then you catch yourself going, so and so never found out that I did that, obviously. But you're thinking, wait, who am I performing for? There's no one actually here. It's not like I'm in church or in a company or on social media signaling to everyone I've done this. I'm here. Yeah, it's such an artificial thing I did. And so you can perform for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, you
can perform for an audience of one. Yeah, which
big
that's
time.
the ego, and that's what's funny. Like sometimes, you know me, I'm whatever. If I'm either cynical or you know I'm oversensitive to the bullshitness of people. But yeah, sometimes people go, oh, so and so lovely. You know, they do this and they do it without putting big attention to themselves and all that. And then I might look at the person they're talking about, whoever it is, and I think, still phony for me.
Yeah.
Because you can perform for yourself. And I guess maybe I've done it so much that maybe I feel like I sell it.
It's like a very inescapable human tendency. Like it's, as in, like, I've noticed
so much,
you notice in yourself, like, for example, running, for example, like you always want to get faster.
Talk about riding,
yeah, you want to get faster. You know, and there's like, for example, on Strava, you do like putting your splits up and you know what you want people to see that you're doing a good session and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's on so many levels. Sometimes I'm like, do I have to judge that all this? Like, is it
definitely not.
You know, because you feel like, oh, I should be hiding this and I should be.
And funnily enough, I'd say that is the actual that voice. That should I be judging this? That's actually the artificial voice.
Yeah.
That's the inauthentic part. The part that goes, I know that as human being, this is my belief. The part of me that goes, I'm going to understand that I'm a human and this is trivial. This thing I'd love to put up there in front of everyone. But, you know, whatever. You know, this is my running time and it's up there.
That's just...
And that's the equivalent of me going, I look good in this picture. I'm going to put it on Instagram. But I know that this is such a trivial thing, that desire to like, let's just have it out there. But there's somewhere, it's a very fine line, you know, between you're just going with, you know, this sometimes fake thing. It's just this impossible to pin, as we've discussed, impossible to pin. And the going overboard trying to avoid it is actually still trying to look good.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're doomed to do that no matter what. Pretty much every situation.
What you find yourself tennis balling in your head.
Yeah.
It's like a ball that just keeps bouncing because it's like, oh, but is it that way? But I'd be fake. But is it that if I'm fake?
That's where things lead to like...
I'll make it less fake. I won't put a filter on it. So you're bargaining with yourself about yourself, wasting your own time. And so just put the picture out. Just put up the running time. It's like I talked to this friend of mine who's a rider as well. And he goes, you know, I get dressed up to go to a cafe to write on my own. But it just helps me get into the zone. I go, I do that too sometimes. Like I want to get dressed up a bit more than I need to go sit in a cafe on my own because I'm like, I'm dressing how a writer would dress, you know, and I have a tiny little piccolo like it maybe because I don't have wine because it's in the morning and I'm not, you know, an alcoholic. I'm just fitting this little image in my head. And it's so stupid, but, you know...
What else are you going to do? What else are you going to do?
Keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Just don't be an arsehole when you've been an arsehole. Yeah, I keep cutting you off. You had something else you're going to say?
No, I don't think so.
Lost it?
Well, I was saying I think for example, when I judge myself about, you know, not getting into things too much and that always leads down the path of like pulling back too much from it. And then that has its own negative consequence where you're like, well, but these are the things I love to do. Like, why should I be like, I don't know. I just ping pong back and forth.
My example of that. Do you have an example of that?
I have an example. Running, like when I feel like something always happens where I don't know, something happens and then you're like, I'm doing this too much or like, you know, I'm getting too obsessed or something like that. Yeah. But then it flings you in the opposite direction where you're like, you know what? I don't need this anymore. But then you sit in that for a bit, but you're compelled, like I'm compelled to like go back into it.
You're a runner.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's who you are.
Exactly. So I feel like I shouldn't always be shouldn't always be judging the things that I'm genuinely interested in.
Yeah. And I feel like gut over head. That's what it comes to. The ping-ponging, the ball bouncing around, like, should I do this? That's actually in your head. It's like Paul, the co-author of, you guys know Paul, who I'm doing the book with. He put it brilliant once. He goes, in your head, this is an oversimplification. What does it mean to be only in your head? But, in your head is where, like, the ego is, right? And the ego is always relying on what looks good to make decisions, right? Rule of thumb. So if you're trying to figure something out totally with your head, you're using the ego. So that's what I mean by it's still about looking good when it's not that the ego is always bad, of course. It's a tool, but it's like that's that. Oh, but if I don't put it up, if I don't put a picture on Instagram, I don't put up my running time, I'm humble.
Yeah, that's
you perform for yourself.
Version of
that's
the
ego.
same thing. It's
exactly.
the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right? But he goes, what feeling? Ego doesn't know feeling. So when you're feeling your way more, like, I just feel like I want to run, and I'm putting the time up. That's a lot more natural. What you feel like, you just feel like, this is me. This is what I do. I'm a runner. All right? Put it out there, because why not?
Yeah.
And so there's nothing you could rule out. And that's the word for going without that's most powerful, I think, is renounce. Right? And it's a very biblical kind of renounce. But I think maybe talking to you a lot helped me come to this kind of little realization, what I think is a realization, that what you renounce, you're just tied to invisibly.
Yeah.
So what you just try and give up, go without, and cut yourself off from, that's you still tied to it, but you just don't want to see the link. It's not the true freedom from it, So it's like it's you're dragging something around, but you can't see what it is because you feel like and it's very big in religion. So that idea in religion, to me, of like sacrifice, going without, I normally speak about Catholicism, Christianity, because that's what I know most of, how we grew up. And there's a lot of that in there. And that's why you see, I think, you get a lot of repressed desire for shit. You know what I mean? Like, sex is a big one, for example. And so it's all about, there's a lot of that message in there that if you're not married, sex is totally bad, So it's renounce. But you can see that just gets suppressed and it often pops up somewhere. You know what I mean? It pops up somewhere else. And you get different sorts of problems because you're trying to like just say you're not, like, I think the best example is like, talked about this before, of that sort of idea is there's a film called American Beauty. So you'd be familiar with American Beauty, but I don't think you'd know what I'm talking about. And there's a character in there who he's married, but it's revealed towards the end. Spoiler alert. It's revealed towards the end that he's actually gay. And so when he thinks his son is gay, he thinks his son's gay for a bit. His son's not gay. He's gay. But he gets really he beats the shit out of him. You know what I mean? Like he's attacking him. And this is like the funny everyday stereotype about, like a guy who's uncomfortable around, say homosexual men or any implied homosexuality from men, because it's like, oh no, keep on. And then we have the joke about being comfortable. No, I'm comfortable with my masculinity. Bring my gay friend here. I can give him a kiss and a hug. I'm not. Because the joke is that the guy who's going, no, keep them away from me. The joke is that he's got that tendency in him, and that's why he doesn't want to give into it. So it's like that's a funny example of what I think, and the extreme version of when renouncing and giving things up, what it does. So that's why it's funny that everything I think annoys me, or that we might talk about here, is very rarely like you can justify saying no one should ever do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially anything that I might not agree with or think is right for me. That's normally what we do as people. We normally take what we don't want to do or what we don't like. And then very often, many people just start projecting that onto everyone else. But don't think of it as they don't think that's what they're doing. They just think this is right, this is wrong. because that's the story that helps to hold their identity together. I feel. I don't know. Are there better examples of any of that? Maybe any like everyday examples. And I think that's also why when they say like you make something forbidden, it just makes it more attractive.
Yeah.
Because I think you're just tying it to people. You know, I mean, sometimes that works because you're implying this is not good. Like, you know, drugs, for example. Drugs, bad. But even that's oversimplified. But yeah, it probably doesn't work because it just has this tied, like invisible, you've just hidden it. And then you can't, when you hide something, you can't see it. So that's the trade-off of shrouding things in darkness.
I don't know. Sometimes, like, for example, you not renounce, but have the idea that money is, you know,
Great example.
A negative when.
Great example.
And I've gone through back and forth periods with it, but if you like push that away, you're sort of like repressing this desire to do well financially or to like do well in your career and stuff like that, which is something that you like intrinsically for me, like that's what I want to do. Like that as a human, you're always like,
yeah, me too.
But if you try to push it away, for example, it just comes out wrong.
Yeah.
Sense. It's like, what are you so afraid of in this situation?
I give you the best example was Constant Student.
Yeah.
So the obviously there's community it was running, you guys were loosely involved with, and there's a lot of young people, often a lot of people who are very, you know, obviously talented, I'd say like ambitious, but very kind of compassionate, I'd say. Compassionate, curious, open-minded, you know, very friendly, and then very interested in like meaningful and, you know, work and artistic kind of careers and unconventional things. And so there's a lot of like positive world energy, you know. But I frequently found, and Carl Jung used to have this phrase, you know, he'd call it the shadow. Like every personality has like a shadow personality that's just like got the darker elements of your personality and it just lies underneath. And that you can get the same idea from reading the way Freud understood people. And there's a good term for it. Like with most of them, there's this like real big shadow, like lurking underneath. And obviously, it became increasingly clear how much that was true for myself as well. But I'm not judging people. Like we're all people. I'm just saying there was a particularly like pro-social, you know, positive world. You know, I want to make the world a better place vibe. But underneath that, people would come to me like, yeah, I like this because this can help me build my own empire. I'd be like, okay, empire, you know, that's very about you, but like this in my head, I go, that's very about you, but you know, I guess. And so you've got people who want to build their empires, figure out how to make, you know, get straight to a 6-figure income, but want to make the world a better place. And want to have a purposeful, meaningful career. You just got this complicated you know, recipe you're trying to cook with life in your career. Yeah. And then part of the Constant Student problem was trying to solve that problem. Impossible. Do you know what I mean? Which is so impossible. It's just so complex. So the actual best thing for me, I felt, was letting all that go.
You know, everyone wants to build their own empire. Everyone wants to build their own empire. And I have to give some people credit for being able to say it and come out with it.
But it's very funny because you felt like it was hiding, and then they just felt like, yeah, I can say it in front of Joe, you know, but I shouldn't normally, because the shadow, often that shadow idea is about parts you think you shouldn't show about yourself, and you even hide from yourself, and it's fascinating, you know. And I think the best place to understand that idea is probably in apart from just observing, you know, when you observe people and their character suddenly changes. Out of nothing. You feel like there's just a different person you're talking to. But I think you also see it a lot in movies and you know, good literature. You see that part of humanity kind of communicated well with Jekyll and Hyde, for example. You know, like there's a beast. What is it? It's like beast, big, strong.
Yeah, it's
Jekyll's the big, strong.
The beast.
Monster, the beast, and the scientist. I think Hyde is like calm every day.
Yeah.
And he keeps switching between the two. Even the werewolf idea. Like a werewolf, someone who gets bitten by another werewolf. And then, you know, on certain occasions, the moon, this beast that's inside them that has a different will completely to theirs, they got no control over, just comes out and just attacks people, and it's trying to create more werewolves is all it actually ends up doing. To me, it's a beautiful metaphorical understanding of what, you know, is how we are. But the more I think you try and say things that you're attracted to, that you're trying to like push away or going, no, that's not good or that's bad, money or whatever it is, success, fame, attention, love. I think you're just pushing it into the shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just going, all right, you're just building the werewolf, you know, you're building up the jackal. That's probably all you do. You just accept it and it can be in the light. It's not dark. You know, you just say, all right. And that's me. I think that way about just business in general. Last couple of years, I was like, when I went more into writing again, I was like, yeah, business can be such a trap to get caught up in yourself. Now I'm just becoming much more open to the idea of, you know, it can be fun, meaningful. A lot of good things can come from it. It's not this thing to be that wary of, Joe. It's just business.
Yeah.
It's just running. It's just social media. It's just money. You know, they have such a power and like symbolism. They can turn a person around 180, and at the same time they can't. It all depends on like what's going on in you when you interact with them. You know, like it always takes two chemicals to make a chemical reaction, or it might not actually. I shouldn't speak to that. I'm not Walter White, and I don't know chemistry very well. It's a fascinating conversation because we got there from talking a little bit about the activism thing again. But it seems like that's always, you can't get away from that conversation. This, for me, I can't get away from the conversation we've just had, which is obviously, again, a lot of my own rambling. When you're having these other conversations. You know what I mean? When people start talking about the latest issue going on or whatever else. You just feel like, because why are people so worked up, and why do they react the way they react? I think it's because of all this other stuff that is always going on, as well as there is a genuine war happening.
Yes.
And there, you know, at another time there's a genuine part of society that is not doing as well as it could be. And we want to help those parts of society. It's genuine. It's a very genuine thing that could be addressed and discussed. But because we're humans, we're all carrying baggage, you know, and it's I don't know how, if it's even, I come back to what you said, that the reality that we are human. I don't know how much you can keep your baggage out of it, right? If that's possible. Like, I'm going to be objective about this. The person who's declaring that they're being objective is probably the one person you can be sure is not objective.
It's very difficult to be.
I don't think I've ever managed it.
It's an impossible, like,
well,
this
the Eckhart Tolle in the world can't get you to that point.
No.
I don't think.
What? We'll leave that.
There's so much I feel comfortable saying that Luke will just too smart to touch with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. I'm glad you can point that out.
That's all right. I'll be the bad cop.
No, but it's funny to see yourself just getting zigzagged around in so many different directions.
Yeah.
And then like you pick a direction, you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
But then
I love that.
Yeah.
But then you're like, this is it. I've fixed myself. I can fix myself via this avenue.
And now I can fix everyone else.
Yeah. Oh no, let me know. I can't get there because before I do, then I realize like, shit, I can't.
Yeah. So, shit, I didn't figure that one out.
I didn't fix myself because you can't fix yourself.
No, you can't fix yourself. Sorry, guys. There's many things you can fix, but not yourself. Yeah.
I was going to say a good example was when I went on a year of no drinking.
Oh yeah.
Objectively,
this is a beautiful example, actually.
Yeah, objectively a good thing.
Context was you were not coping too well with drinking necessarily.
No, I have a tendency to
overdo it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't really have. There's a lot of nights where I can just have one.
Yeah,
or two
not
drinks,
always, but you
when
are
I
more
flick
likely
the
to
switch,
overdo it than I am.
Yeah, correct. When I flick the switch, I flick the switch.
It's on.
And then it leads to everyone knows
other
what
consequences.
happens. So it took a year off drinking, but then I noticed things were going well for myself.
Yeah.
And then the tendency is to like, I've got to fix some
Spread
other
the
people.
good news.
Yeah.
Evangelize.
So I had a mate, I had another
Form a
friend
club.
who was... See, the thing, obviously, most people...
Constant sober.
Yeah. I was probably more infuriating when I was sober. Anyway.
I don't remember having any
No.
issues with you, but
No.
carry on.
Then I had a friend who was, similar tendencies to me. So, like, I put a lot of my energy in...
Yeah. They're the ones that get you.
Keeping
The ones where you
him
see yourself.
sober as well, because I'm like, I can, I'm making a difference in this person's life. But there were things where he wanted to like go to events and like
You're like,
drink,
okay.
and I'm like, oh man, we're on this path. And to be honest, it feels like positive that you're like really helping
the
someone
time,
in the
yeah.
moment. But at the end of the day, what I realized, like, people got to do things like I don't want to stop that person from doing what they want to do at the end of the day. So there's a tendency to just like be like, I found the answer. Look how good my life's going. Let me try and fix.
Yep.
So that's like
Me too.
But it's very hard to, because you don't know, like, am I doing a good thing? Like, I might be doing a good thing here.
So this is the person I'd say. This is when we talk about standing up for a cause or something you see going wrong in your workplace, in the world, whatever, right? You have to work with the story. We all have stories. I'm not saying story to belittle or gaslight. You have to work with the story of whoever you're dealing with.
Yeah.
The story in their head they have about themselves. Because that is an immovable object. And it's their right, I think, to pick the story because I don't know what they're going through, what they've been through in their life. Or what they're going through now. And they might just need a story to cope. And so there's this dance of not just letting people do whatever just because they believe in a certain thing. But your point is so spot on because there's often not a shadow of doubt. And that's why you can't talk to that person necessarily. And I mean talk to in the way of convincing people.
Yeah.
Because you're looking in a mirror in a way. Like the person you're trying, for example, in that example, and then give a meta example on top of that.
Can I just give the end of
Please.
that example? So the reason why I look back at it on a slightly negative light, because it ended in like me being like, you have a problem.
Yeah.
Like this is helping you sort of thing. And it's like turned almost to a bit antagonistic.
Yep.
Where I didn't mean to be like that. And, and he messaged me and be like, look, man, I really appreciate things, but like, I've just got to do my own thing. And then I was like, shit, what the hell am I doing?
I'd say you realised pretty quickly then.
Yeah, but
quicker
it's
than
like,
most people would have.
It's one thing to make a change for yourself because but you can't go too far with directing other people is what I took from that basically.
Now, the fascinating thing about that, why this is such a good example, I feel like if you're watching a movie, in a movie, someone normally confronts someone about something they're doing wrong in their life, and then that person finally 180s or realizes because of what they've said. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe even Good Will Hunting or something. I can't remember. I'm trying to think like a good example to bring up. But I feel like that is a skewing of reality. I think
Big time.
It's not common at all. And so I was having a conversation with someone last night about you got to stand up for, you got to tell people that they're not doing the right thing and mistreating you. You got to tell them that they're doing it. You got to stand up. They're going, yeah, maybe. I go, it's just never worked for me to change their behavior.
Yeah.
You might plant a seed and they change it later. So I'm not going to overlook that. It's not going to happen at the point you demand it. But then this person I was talking to, the conversation's not finished. Because I said, that doesn't work for me, but you're welcome to try whatever you want. Which is me trying to learn that lesson of telling people what they should do. I think they thought I meant you got to just put up with it. It's not necessarily that you have to put up with it, I think. And what I normally do is in a situation where someone's, I don't think, doing the right thing and it's impacting me, is I normally just try to create a bit of distance. And sometimes silence says more than, and that's the irony of silence is violence. I mean, it can be the violence someone needs. sometimes is silence, when you have run out of things you think you can say to them. And it's at the time I've been there. Like, I thought I was very self-aware. I was doing this podcast, I was aware of all the Buddhism concepts. And then I was going, no, I know how I can save this person a couple of years of tunneling in the wrong direction. And the reality is people really only learn themselves.
Yeah.
And even if you are the person, but like I'll read, for example, I love that book, Awareness by Anthony DeMello, right? Which you've read. And I'll reflect back on that, a quote, right? At another time in my life. I'll go back to the book I read as a 25-year-old and I'll see a line that I already read, but it just hits me again, and it hits me properly this time. And it's, for example, like, always trying to change things, aren't we? Always want other people to change. Understand, and then things will change. So I go back to that line, but that line didn't change me, right? I was realizing it, and then sometimes someone puts it in language that gets you through the door, that clarifies it. And that's what I think there's a failure of attribution when someone gives someone a hard message and that person goes, shit, you're right. I think that person has to realize it themselves for that other person to have convinced them.
Yeah.
So I think you actually convince yourself. And that's why my approach currently is what it is with people whenever something prickly comes up or there's an issue or there's something going wrong, is I'm normally just holding space. 99% of the time, I feel like I'm just holding space for them to realize what hopefully they should realize. Because as my good mate Paul says, again, the co-author mate Paul, what you emanate is much more powerful than what you say. Like what you give off. So the funny example of what you told is there's a layer on top of that. And I'll tell you what I mean with a story. I was sitting with a friend who was talking about, and this friend of mine, I feel like the way they live, way of doing things, the message this person sends out in the world is a bit off, right? Without going into specifics. So I wouldn't do what they were doing. And I kind of don't see it's like the most right thing, right? It's not the end of the world, but I don't think it's like, there's some ethical questions I have, right? That this person was complaining about someone else and what they were doing with their career and life and they were getting worked up about how that wasn't the answer. Right? So this person, they were complaining about someone who took off overseas to live, away and then work on their business or something away from people they don't like or something like that. And they were telling me that they were going to fly over and get and speak sense to that person. You know what I mean? Right?
That's ridiculous.
Thank you.
That's ridiculous.
Now,
how do you know? Like,
most people might say what I would have said in the past. I'd try and tell that person that's not what you're meant to do. You know what I mean? You're meant to. But I actually thought, hang on, we're in a cycle.
yeah, got to break the chain.
We're in a chain here, and I'm now going to go. No, you don't know what that person needs to do. I was about to say the thought that comes, the reaction was, you got to leave that person alone. I was going to direct that person how to act by saying they got to leave that person alone. And actually what happened, I just left that person I was talking to alone. Which may not have been what I should have done. I don't know. But I felt like that was the right thing to do.
This is probably no harm if they're going to fly over and just...
And then they will learn for themselves that going trying to tell people is probably not the answer. And if they realize it for themselves, it'll be a much more definitive realization.
Yes.
Rather than doing what Joe says. Because I know people who I think, younger obviously, often think, I feel like in their minds, I'm someone they would like to, not impress, but like if Joe thinks it's okay, it's probably okay. I feel like I've had that feedback before, and sometimes I observe it. Maybe it's just my arrogance that I think people are hanging over what I say, but I feel like I have pretty strong evidence for it. And so I also think you want to avoid, in the same way we all have that to our parents, I think, to some degree, whether we know it or not. There's always like a unconscious, like, do things within what my parents might accept, or there's tension if they won't accept it, and you battle with that tension. So you also don't want people to just be doing something because you say so. And that's something a lot of people might disagree with. And you can come back to causes and people might be like, vote this way or do that. And then if people do what they say, they go, congratulations, you did the right thing. Is it the right thing if they're only doing it because of the authority figure? More to do with the authority figure or person that swayed them than actually what they think about, let's say, for example, how they should vote.
I think coming to your other example, it really depends on how much that person is pushing, because the way I see it is you like, if you just make a comment like, oh, you know, I think that might be a bit, you know, you never know.
Yeah.
That might be the right.
I would have happily done that for
as in, yeah. Or you kind of, most people aren't going to make a decision based on that. Like they're not going to listen to you wholesale.
That's exactly what I've found.
Yeah. Like as in, even if you say a comment and you give your opinion that you think.
Well, here's I'll come back to you, not disagreeing with you. What I think of when you say that, I feel like the telling people what they're doing wrong or what they should be doing better is very obvious. But it's basically just about what you want.
It is.
Yeah.
But
I want to tell them how I feel.
Yes.
Yeah.
About what they're doing.
That's
That's what it is.
I've got another example.
It's not often I want what's best for Luke or I want what's best for Oscar.
Yeah.
It's often much more I want, and I guess you have a right to like express how you feel, but sometimes maybe there's a more emotionally mature response, which is sometimes you can tell someone else, my mum's doing this or my partner's doing this, and it's not something you need to express. I think instead of going, Mum, you should be doing this, or girlfriend, you should be doing this. If you realize that it is about getting something off your chest, sometimes the way to express it in that way. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard to tell what you're doing.
Again, no prescription. So everything's so case by case. It's about, I feel like, trying to do the right thing, but is the right thing to just express what might just be your feeling, but to express it as an imperative. Like, you have to do this because I feel like you should do this.
I guess you can.
Yeah, and that's what you're talking about with the drinking.
Yeah.
You could have done the same thing with the drinking. So I often find myself telling stories because I feel like someone will take from it the lesson, maybe, and it might apply to them. So it just feels more respectful. So if someone says, I am going out drinking tonight, and this is probably what you do now, I assume, something like this. If I was in your situation with what I know now, which we were both younger then, you know, and they go, oh, I'm going out, you know, drinking again tonight. Like, I've been drinking a lot, but, you know, I might tell them your story. Or I might tell them my story about, oh, you know, I gave up drinking at one point, not for any particular reason, and just... Sometimes those stories just stop you because it's like, oh, you can have fun without drinking.
I wouldn't use that story because I've gone back to.
Yeah, exactly. No, but the fact that you've gone back to it, I think adds more realism to it.
Yeah.
This is like us going. We've tried to, you know, get better as people. All of us here as we've gone over. It's not like a serious project, but we always, without putting a label on it, it's what we tend to do. We become just aware of more of the stuff about ourselves. But we acknowledge that it's not perfect.
No, it's always...
And that's actually, I think it's good to add that to the narrative.
Well, yeah.
Because we certainly haven't found, we're a bit older than him, but we certainly haven't found an escape velocity of having insecurities and hang-ups and urges and stuff like that. So
I have.
Oscar's attained Nirvana at 21.
Good.
Like all other 21-year-olds.
Here's the thing.
Hey, I'm 22 now. I'm wise.
22.
And now
I'm a big boy.
You can say that you didn't have it when you were 21.
Exactly.
But you have it now.
I'm different. I'm not like the others.
Yeah, you had something. Sorry, I kept cutting you off.
I think I was just going to say, even though I had a year off drinking, you think you've fundamentally changed as a result of that.
That's a good
However, it was like after that, I was like, I had a year off. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
And then like you have, you know, I don't like drink much anymore. So anyway, I'll have a beer every now and then. And then like slowly just creeps. Those same behaviors can come back.
They do, man.
Then it's like where you're back at the same place where the reason why you took the time off. Not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but it's just looking back, like it's very hard to change.
Yeah. I go through those cycles as well where you like strip things back, but it helps you take steps forward. So like I'd say like stopping drinking allows you to grow, whatever that means, right? For example. Yeah. And once you start drinking again, maybe you stop growing, but you're still in a better place than you were a year ago. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's like you always have those vices that you want to that you're kind of afraid of like getting control over you, but even those periods without it, you can still take big steps forward.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's not a problem until it's
a problem.
Until it's like over. Yeah. Until you go overboard, where it's like I think the thing is it does affect like your work, and it does affect like it flows on.
Yeah, it bleeds into something else. We talked about that. I think 2 episodes ago, maybe we talked about that's often the case for how they define mental illness is abnormal. Yeah, it's impacting quality of life. If it's taking something away. If you have anxiety, just in your everyday situations, it's going to happen. Yeah, you're asking for a promotion. Yes, you're probably going to feel a bit anxious. You might not, but it's not abnormal. It's not necessarily so nervous that you can't ask. Yeah. If you're so nervous that you can't actually ask for a prolonged period of time, it might actually be an issue. But otherwise, it's probably just normal anxiety. So that version for me is like it's the metaphor I'd use is like you're driving somewhere and you come back to somewhere you've been before and you had but you got lost last time. And so you go, no, this time I'm going to take the turn off. This time I'm going to take the turn off. But you start to see all the familiar signs of, when you were veering. That's how I feel when I come back to something that I consider to be like a vice or, somewhere I got stuck before. If it was drinking for you, it might have been something else for me, But it's the tricky thing because, you're like, but in theory, for example, business or trying something you tried in the past that failed, for example, you're like, oh, am I just heading down the same path again? It's just an interesting question because life does feel very cyclical a lot of the time. And so you also wonder if the point is not to avoid, which is renouncing, especially if you feel called to do something. But maybe it's the gradual learning. You come back and back to learn. Yes, now I know where to take the turn off. And that's like places I drive frequently where there is a bloody hard turn off to take or something literally. Yeah. After enough goes, you learn where exactly that is. And I think you're all good. You don't get stuck overdoing it and driving past where you're meant to end up if you eventually figure out when to turn off. Hopefully. Yeah. But we don't know.
Don't know. We can only just keep doing our best.
Keep doing our best.
Keep trying.
You know what they should have?
Move forward.
For life. You know what life should have?
What?
The blue ribbons we used to get at the St. Kevin's Athletics Carnival for giving it a go. Not for getting a place, but just for giving it a go. Every year, maybe your birthday. Don't know. Someone should just give you a ribbon. Like,
just a pat on the back.
You haven't done anything that anyone's that impressed with, but you've another year of giving it a go.
You're still here.
You're in the race. And that is worth commending.
Now go and do some impressive shit.
Hey, you got to be in it.
Otherwise, you're going to feel bad about yourself.
You do.
You are still in it.
Exactly.
It's non-linear.
So you still have a chance of winning.
You know what I mean? It could happen any day.
It's true. It could happen
I'm
tomorrow.
I'm going to start handing out ribbons. Keep
do
trying.
Your best.
Do your best.
I'm talking to myself.
Anyone else? Anyone have any parting words of wisdom, enlightenment, insight, profoundness?
Just gotta like not be attached to anything.
Honestly, you just gotta not think too much.
Yeah.
That's honestly.
There's a line in the book. Holy shit! It's only Tuesday, which is coming out.
Out. When's it coming out?
Soon.
Coming out soon.
In a bookstore near you.
Before Christmas. Which Christmas? I don't know. But there's a line where there's a very business-oriented guy who says to a guy who's a bit more laid back. He goes, but isn't all this, talking a bit more about awareness and stuff, he goes, but isn't all this overthinking things? He goes, like, at some point, don't you need to stop thinking and start doing? And the guy goes back to him, yes, it's interesting. Ironically, some of the biggest doers are actually the biggest overthinkers, you know? They compress the magic of life into ones and zeros and always trying to, you know, blah, blah, and feel like they need to be doing, you know, for the sake of it. So it's this impossible thing to capture. How much thinking is too much thinking? I don't know.
But again, that comes to the philosophical question of, is that just you baked in? That's the condition.
Yeah. True. I might be an overthinker. You know, like, I think I am.
Not overthinking, but also like overdoing and like all these things. It's like, yeah. Is there a way around it? If
you are not causing significant harm to self and others, carry on.
My brother has a good
just a little harm is
I'll
all.
let him talk.
Yeah,
about
we'll have
it.
Matt Smith on.
Podcast.
We'll call that episode The Other Smith.
The Other Smith.
There's only two Smiths in the world.
Yes, the one that I need advice from.
Two of this kind, anyway.
He's like, you can't control yourself. You need to be able to control yourself. Thank you.
All right. I love that, guys. Thanks very much.
Well done.
The world is now enlightened.
Thank you.
But that enlightenment will wear off in about 1 week, by which time there'll be a new episode to re-enlighten the world.
Stay
End
tuned.
misery, war, and bloodshed. Thanks, gents.
Thanks, gents.
Signing off.